I'm 9 hours away or 9 days without a word, and she's still stirring a pot when he struts in, large as life and twice as natural, lounges the evening away in his leather chair. But she's afraid to enter that inner sanctum, the second living room he considers his. Although there's plenty left to say. Maybe once a month she invades his space, rehearsed words on her lips. He glances up and says, "Well, what do you want now? What is it you want now?" Another poem about words. There was a competition for poets on the bus, Just Buffalo, and mine was among many, many poems that were selected to be included in Words on the Bus. This is called Words Were Our Warmth. Now you tell me you're going away, this time for good, nothing to say. Silence blots out exchange. Words were our only warmth. Isn't it strange? Winter makes your news endurable, this abiding chill through my veins, holding me still. This is a poem I recently had accepted, so I'm going to read it because I'm pleased about that. It's called Here You Are Now. Let those days go by. Recollections need not be scrutinized under a microscope. They will implode eventually, spewing tiny fragments of faded gray paper, patterning the linoleum. Your high school scrapbook, for instance, which you planned desperately to hold on to, but someone said no, so you didn't. Much wiser to toss away each makeout session, each beach bonfire, replete with guitar and singing, each elegant tea dance, all now obliterated. Let those days go. They were expendable. Here you are now, old but enduring, savoring the high gloss of silver on the lip of the tall pitcher, spilling some mulled wine on the linen tablecloth. Can you not celebrate? This is a poem about my father, about whom I've written many poems. It's called The Walnut Boat. The poems I'm reading tonight are all new, as in the last year, maybe at most year and a half, unless I tell you otherwise. You can assume they're new. This is called The Walnut Boats. All the small walnut boats he made for us when I was young. Very carefully, my father cracked each nut in half, picked out the tender meat, cleaned out each walnut so it began to resemble a tiny boat. Next, he melted deep red sealing wax, dripping wax inside each little vessel, cut paper triangles from the stack of typing paper on his desk, created small flags he decorated with colored pencils, reds and greens, stars and circles, sometimes even a fierce dragon. He placed wooden toothpicks like masts into the pools of sealing wax, cut minute slits in each colored flag, and slid them on the upright wooden masts. Suddenly we had a fleet of ships to set sail, 7 or 8, almost a navy. On the next rainy afternoon, we'd slip on boots and raincoats, carry our fragile barks to set afloat in the sewer gushing past the boat house. I sang Anchors Aweigh, my boys, watching our small crafts wash past the tree roots toward the nearest drain. Perhaps singing could delay their leaving while they sped swiftly down to join the great flotilla underneath the streets. Why do we have to let them go? I whimpered. My father answered me, he always knew what to say. Beautiful things need to be on their way. This is the beginning of a few poems about communication or miscommunication. Actually, this one is a little older. Words on a crumpled cloth. Revised, of course, I revise all the time. So words on a crumpled cloth. I'm always talking to two of you while you reply to three of me. You're over there in two separate chairs, remote and close. I'm split in bits, haphazardly strewn about the room, head, limbs, heart, each quite apart, three distinct entities I cannot integrate. You dart and dawdle far across the floor. I rush and hush and pause beside the silent door. Neither one of us assumes we understand this complicated scene. Who asks, who answers whom, what is, what might have been. You take or do not take my seldom seeking hand. And this is called Anything Approximating Love. Again, she writes, listen, I need to hear from you. My brain is glazed from waiting. You don't have to say much, believe me. I'll even supply the text. Just write it out in your vague hand. Yes, no, maybe, rain all afternoon. Keep in touch, someday, perhaps. Love, or anything approximating love. There, wasn't that easy? Theatricals. Emphatically, I say out loud, I forgive you, but I don't really. How to forgive tricks, sour tastes, fake tickets, forged plot. Oh, hell, we're nearly dead. I might as well forgive him. Our lives seemed mostly phony, last lines improvised in foreign accents, sets crumbling, velvet curtains frayed. Anyway, I had the best part. So forget it, forgive him. It's not that hard. This is definitely about miscommunication. It's called Diagnosis for Two Voices. You know my friend Audrey? Well, she's having intimacy problems. She's what? I said she's having intimacy problems. What the hell is that? You know, problems with intimacy. Problems with sex? No, problems with intimacy, like being close to people. She has problems getting close to other people. I don't consider that a problem. Maybe she's like me. Maybe she thinks other people are assholes. Overbite. I'd prefer you keep my name out of your mouth. Though maybe I should linger on the tip of your tongue like a bee sting. A reminder that you used to suck my name like a hard candy you didn't want to dissolve. No, keep my mouth. Excuse me. No, keep my name in your mouth, but do not mention me to the unspeakable people you hang out with. We seemed to write each other's lyrics some time back. Time erodes times. And it's time now to keep your mouth shut. My name stuck somewhere behind a set of decaying molars. More about words and how to console someone. Something else. This is called something else. It's very new. As in month. That's very new. Something else. Evenings when I drive by your workplace, she says, and see your office light still burning, it makes my stomach ache because it means you're there with someone else. He says calmly, without hesitation, no, it's probably the cleaning staff. They often arrive after my workday and turn the brass lamps on to clean. She thinks that might not be true. He's probably there with someone else. But he says these words because he cares about her. He knows she's sad. She thinks that is such a consoling remark, far better than a sip of Irish whiskey. How does he know? How does he know ways to make her inside stop screaming? That harrowing light she sees is maybe just something else. Well, we're now in December, which isn't very long past November, and this is a poem about November, which I wrote in November, called Also November. While golden November takes over, takes away, it's not a bad time to die. Trees blazing their radiant leaves, flinging fistfuls into failing eyes, legs weakening as days grow darker, earlier. The wheeze in your chest is unlike any early spring breeze, more the way a slow door eases itself shut, wheezing. If in fact you're leaving, don't ask for much. Let death be swift, keen, a paring knife stabbing the russet apple, its generous taste sweet between your teeth. Well, this is going to be another funny one because it's time for a little break and it's all this sorrow. And so this is a funny one. It's called "And Ride in a Carriage with 6 White Horses." My pesky grandson, Sam, age 12, asks if I could ever be the Queen of England. No, I don't think so, I reply. It's really quite unlikely. But you're related to royalty, aren't you? He questions. Well, yes, distantly. I mean, there are probably 67 dukes and duchesses, lords and ladies, nieces and nephews, third cousins twice removed, and maybe even a chambermaid or two before my name could crop up on any list. But it could happen, couldn't it, he insists? I mean, if every single one of them suddenly died in some terrible plague or fire or sinking ships, then they could go searching for you. And it's possible. You could be the next Queen of England, couldn't you? Listen, honey, I say, I'm never going to get to tip the tiara. You might as well get used to that. But he repeated himself. I bet if everything went entirely wrong, you could be the next Queen of England. Oh, what the hell, I say to myself, this kid is never going to give up. Yes, I replied. In that case, you're absolutely right. If everything went entirely wrong, then I could be the next Queen of England. So you better start taking your feet off the kitchen table. Well, 3 years ago, I had a concussion, pretty bad concussion. And I just now wrote about it. I mean, that's pretty quick. 3 years is quick. Sometimes it takes me 17 years to get around to writing about something. So this is quick, but I just recently wrote this called Concussion. And it's the second to last poem. So you're almost finished with hearing these kinds of poems. Okay, Concussion. My addled brain, stunned, slumbers inside the skull of mine, stomped in the dead of night by the hoof of a rearing stallion. My feet slipped out from under me and down I crashed on the back of this fragile blessing, my sweet head. The result, a blasted headache that will not erase a desperate need to sleep from going mad. Meanwhile, people in my distant past clamor to emerge from interior folds, chatting with me in muttered whispers. They sound familiar, but their names don't match. Here I am climbing old fences, dozing on and on. 2 bed pillows, the color of my bleached face, cradle this poor wretch, my shattered brain, whom I once thought I knew so well. And this is the last one. And as many of you know, my relationship with nature is somewhat strained, if not to say non-existent. But this my final poem. This is my final exhibits signs that I may have many as yet undeveloped facets. It's called Call in Your Angels. Where are my angels anyway? A great blue heron lurks or considers his life on a leafy branch of a capacious tree bending over the creek in the cemetery just across the street from me. He was there yesterday, preening, his long beak tucked in his lavish chest of gray-blue feathers, monk-like, stolid and imposing, gazing my way. Today, when I return, there he is again on the same branch of the same damn tree. Good God, is he dead or something? No, he turns his head, watching as wild ducks gather in a pack to take wing. He must be waiting for me. Could this be one of my angels? Perhaps he is a kind of intercessor between my vacancy and that which is abundant. I'm not inclined to ask him for a blessing, but his presence in this graveyard seems auspicious, transforming one more bleak evening into something maybe just a tiny bit holy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elsie. And for those of you who don't recognize this, usually in the Jewish sanctuary we don't clap, so we tend to do this to say it's great and thank you so much. And now it's my pleasure to talk about Paul Namser, who is new to us. He comes here from, I think, Boston, yes? I spoke earlier of immediate yet unlikely friendships, and Paul Namser is another one. We met in a Zoom poetry class. He was the brilliant and well-established poet, and I was the foreign outsider. Yet I felt from the start he helped me, pointed out good things and things I could change. Talmud says, if you have studied, go teach. Now, Paul Namser is an extraordinary poet and teacher. So I'm very excited to welcome him to our Buffalo Corner reading series. Now, I don't know, is Peter Ramus, are you here? Peter was supposed to come. Is he here? He's a rock star. We never know. Is he gonna show up or is he not here? Does anybody know?
I don't see him, Ganoa.
No,
I don't
no.
see his name.
I apologize. I guess I reminded him several times. I want you to know, but please, Paul, you don't need Peter Ramus or anybody. Go ahead.
Thanks, Gano. I really appreciate the introduction. I want to thank you also, and Irene and Joanne and everyone for organizing this reading and the opportunity to hear the poems that I've just heard by several people, which I really enjoyed. And I want to thank Congregation Shir Shalom for having this reading series, which is just a wonderful thing. And thank all of you for coming. I'm going to be reading from my new book, which is called 1,000 Curves. That's the book. And came out this year. It's a collection of poems written over a lifetime and about that lifetime. So, what I knew and what I had to say. Dad didn't believe in speaking before you had to speak. Mom talked like a rainstorm to keep stray planets away. I remember struggles with what I had to say. On the seaside prom, I'd run to a bench and let my grandparents catch up to me. Grandma and Grandpa with canes colliding, in and out of breath, but they kept on talking, like their tongues were ponies, ahead of the Cossacks, whose braided whips were gaining. It was fast, in Yiddish. I didn't know how they kept on. And Mom and Dad always in front. I thought she was a seagull flapping and lighting, him cormorant grunting, sometimes nodding, or staring out toward the insistence of the sea. The whole conversation out of earshot to me. Then a beach fog that blew in close around my arms, clung soft as wet fleece, and flickered flames. I thought the ocean had wrapped me in its tongues. Mouth of the mechanicum, Tillamook head, the long winds that gusted words of white drumming waves. I didn't speak then. I didn't know the way. Here are my feet, like a monkey's on a man. Here the mouth of a boy learning where to stand, who just learned to say, here I am. This is called Bookkeeper. It's in my mother's voice. She worked as a bookkeeper, stenographer for decades, and she worked in particular in my grandparents' tool store in Portland, Oregon, where my dad worked too. And I spent a lot of time, although I didn't work there. So, Bookkeeper. My hair, a new poured copper. In my wedding dress, a tulip in a narrow fluted vase. But beauty is a swift flown. My son came out of me willing as a cloud. To me, a digit starer, shepherdess of integers, Rebbitzin of ledgers. I keep them blade clean. Heaven does not love wrong numbers. Some days the books are angry enough to tear the throat out of a bullock. My desk smells of knife wounds and raising. I make an error. I fix it. I teach my son to alphabetize. He builds Jerusalems of ordered papers. A stray sheet sails to the streaky floor, like a seabird lighting on salt that drolls with bubbles. We pour ourselves, forget ourselves. We count and lose count. I tell him heaven is listening. We eat our tuna on dark. He practices sums, reading story problems I've written on a paper. 2, he says, plus 5, he says. He looks up. Is it listening now? Song over song for my father. A song for my father is a jazz tune by Horace Silver. My dad loved jazz. Song over song for my father. Gotta go. Your tongue's all slurs. The Johnny's a page of piss. Lips cracking up. Hum setting fires. Behold, letters fly and only the parchment burns. Fingers flutter. A tumult of wrens returns. Chitters drown the radio jazz. You ask me to bend your knees. You tap slower than slow behind the beat. A painted tent folds up into your eyes. The animals no longer need the air, you say, and I am breathing there, and start a prayer. Too late. This is called Timeshare. Mornings before Mom woke up dying back at the timeshare. Before any of us knew she was giving in at last, bones about to break like crazy, her blood eating up the rest of her. Dad scuffed barefoot, dawn after dawn, to the brown foam edge of the brown rice reef and snapped the shutter of his big handhold, the size of our squirming 3-month-old. From where he stood, the angle maybe didn't much matter, but he knelt down, twisting knees to water, to make the long waves stand still against the all at once of some red everything. Years later, when he and all his wives were gone, I found packets, hundreds of photos, pure preserved time, in envelopes marked Hawaii sunrise, stowed in a side drawer of his home office desk. No dates on them. My family came from Eastern Europe. On my mom's side, they were from Ukraine, and on my dad's side, from Poland and Lithuania. And this is kind of a dream of the old country, at least as I imagined it, without a whisper. The people carried a homeland in their pockets, for the world was infested with matter. A straw house could be midwife to a bonfire. The old stories left the people cold. It wasn't safe to rely too much on anyone. Anyone might die without a whisper. Of course, an idol might scare a ravening brigand. Its worship was worth bouquets. Burn goat bones lie in egg yolk, chew cured hearts. It wouldn't serve in place of gruel, wouldn't tame a loud, mad dog. Anyone might die without a whisper. The wise man understood that the people longed for spectacle, as if his staff were the lever that would move 10 mountains, and his tent were the wing that would soar above green fields after they had died without a whisper. The wise knew that matter was a dangerous thing. They were experts in diplomacy. They spoke of God as a next best friend, unashamed of their ancient simplicity. They too might die without a whisper. So I worked for many years in a law firm in a skyscraper, and the way it was set up, by nighttime, you would look outside, you'd see what was going on out there, but you got a complete reflection of everything that was in the office as well. So this poem is called Landscape with View of Lawyer. It's about that that superimposition. I press up to near the big window on the 19th floor, like someone who cannot make out much in a face, but must go up to it and squint close, run fingertips over the cheeks to be sure of its shape, though my desk has disappeared under the nimbus and the precedents. And every dawn I dream I'm a ritual slaughterer, an honest, kind, and upright man with a knife, a whetstone, and these teeth. This one's called Mitte. Mitte is the central neighborhood in Berlin. And this is about a trip somewhat fantastic trip that we took there. But we really did take a trip there, my wife and I. And the reference to the Pergamon altar, there's something called the Museum Island in the midst of Mitte. And the Pergamon Museum, which contains this altar, it's one of these huge Greek bas-reliefs, like the Elgin marbles in London. And this one is depicting the war between the gods and the giants. So, Mitte. It's a prose poem. By the time the company reconfigured the work plan, I was too old to use any of my skills. But I went along looking for another pile of trinkets, figuring my pockets were hardly full. When we got to Berlin, the streets were so torn up that the night was a stumble through a coal pit, the holes leading only to holes. I fumbled to repair an underground switch, which, no matter what you pushed, snapped every light on, like some harsh accuser who doesn't remember what you did, but knows you were the worst man in Germany. There was no fixing the light, but I told folks I might have. And though pasts come back, memories might change. My trip report is most accurate, listing what I didn't see, like the World War II bomb they defused at the main train station while repelling my taxi into long, looping detours. I fell asleep once, crossing blocks of dotted line borders. But I remembered the whole thing. Section 3, missing at the Pergamon altar, a giant's neck trampled by a sandaled foot, a tensely twisted sea god's gut, the heart-crushing way I once was in love with a headless goddess on a legless horse. By the time I'd written this, I had nothing left. A balloon brushed my cheek where I slumped in the park. I cried over babies while grinning like a great and stared at a cart with glassed-in cheese. Construction was quiet. Must be Sunday. They brought me a hunk of grass, frozen together like a bouquet, and said, "Perhaps your family once lived here." Blessing over water. First, I learned there is no blessing over water, but there is. By your word, all has come to be. To be pale falls of spray, sung most at a precipice, to drink in as when snow gray geese look down. Wave breaks to waves. I look out towards the vortex, listen down through fog, swallowing drops as scarp gives to slide. Whatever railing keeps me at the edge, I hold on to it. Water, wetting lips, mist, saying sky. This is set at the Dead Sea. It's called The Dead at Home. The dead at home snag on brush and low cactus. They swing like paper streamers or like land changing hands. No cure for this, only white gauze rising. A dry light across a ribbed gash that floods in spring, driving the wild goats up onto a knife edge. Leopards leap up quietly after them. Myself, I've been occupied, prayerless in a cave, reconstructing the Temple of Solomon. In the creases of this gray next mud tunnel room, walls in which wasps have dug millions of holes, the buzz like living water. How beautiful the falls of En-Gedi. How lonely the low-slung acacias on a cliff above the Dead Sea. Everyone's hideaway is on top of someone else's. Everybody's water is everyone's wave. Swimmer, swimmer, don't put your eyes where the dead live. Who speaks the word salt without every wound and pain? For the young, wisdom is a tooth to be filled, a wasp says, as it stings me on the tongue. The dead remember what they never knew. So 3 more poems. When the pandemic hit in 2020, my wife and I moved from our house in Cambridge to a house we have in rural Maine. It's pretty remote. And this poem is called "This Cold World We Fled To." And then it never got warm. We stay away from everyone and hurry into woods, into fresh water with snapping turtles. Plume-tailed birds come in for a cooling. Water seizes us with words we need to send fast over tongues, through teeth chattering. As to the soul, well, where are you, little hover? Heart among the togue, I worry for you, finning through a forest of hooks. I look up at the moon and am dizzy thinking of craters throwing down toward my eyes a wild, blank snow. Or the icebergs an archangel hurls into my half sleep. Two-hand overhead heave and heavy breathing until the splash takes my breath and everything I wish for. Even fanfares of green bees bouncing on green blooms. But, oh, we say, sun ups, ruddy's frost, and we are creatures made in the likeness of the cold. Cold created them, him and her. Cold shivered them, woman and man, as if surprise had formed us in the image of surprise. Our voices get lost in the winter birds. At every turn, we see shelter in each other. I feel the lean of birches through your body's lean on mine. This is called Motivation Deluge. It's in theater, there are these motivations that sometimes are written by the director or somebody, and this is a sort of a Stanislavskian motivation about the flood. The scene, it's in two voices, so I'll try to raise my hand when I'm reading in the second voice. The scene, whitecaps eat their babies. All the boat can see, what a foolish, lovable sleep we're born to. All it can hear, black whales battering, squeals of wet rock, thuds of hull. Whose wind? The boat rides a horse which bucks the boat's brains to a soup and spills them. The ocean is a sunfire of jellies. Fish entrails, briny wool, sea lettuce, salt that will never come out of my hair. Rain drapes the deck with gray curtains. No matter whose wind, I'll beach us where land is long, and the tiny fruits on twigs grow into birds. And for a last poem, this is called Out of Season, another poem about Maine and Massachusetts and our travels from one to the other, but this one was earlier. Not really a pandemic poem. Out of Season. You know this one, I said, to some song you would have preferred not to know. Out of those close summers when one of those close summers when we could only sleep in Maine, but couldn't get to Maine for weeks. When we did, the ponds darkened blue like winter. The coldest time of year, you said. An eagle's wings looked like snow on snow, even though there were months to go. You didn't believe in insurance for anything. I was raised on it, like oatmeal and smoked fish. But that year, near sleep, we heard what knocked like a northern catastrophe below the full moon past Dog Island. The bears jiggled in tromboning sea. Crazy-haired mergansers ripsawed at the fish weir. Up in bed, you asked if it took spit, a harmonium, anything we had to placate the wind god. That was when I promised you the walls would hold. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paul, Ansi, everybody. We do have a windy night here in Buffalo, so we empathize with let's the walls hold tonight. And I I really one thing. I mean, I admire many things about Paul's writing, but it's these ending parts that fruit grows into birds, things like that that are so special, or that he ends on "Here I am," which we all know from Torah. These are very special moments. So, what a special evening. Thank you all so much. And uh, I wanted to mention that in January we have featured Dr. Ramos, who didn't show up today, so I don't know, and myself. And then in February we have Teresa Wyatt and Perius Nicholas. And it's a hard thing to follow these poets, but I will read two poems, and then if anybody has any questions, we could open up for a little Q&A. I think Paul Namser actually helped me with this one. Pepper and Wine. Walk with me, old harbor naked and sad. Smell of peach in our beech trees. Leaves we ate every spring, no matter how bitter. Nettles too, prickly like hedgehogs. Didn't I hear you long before I found you? Sails salty put away, a harvest already foreign where it grew. Accent added later by maps and travel, by accident, you may say. Geography, nothing but an old carpet sprayed with spit. Tiresome. Memories of men who left and left, tongues drooling, bowing to the god of adventure. I stood in the shade by the gate, watching them leave, carefree and laughing. Absence made me see things. When you took that long, didn't I know what you were doing? Weaving nests and nets to find me. When you finally asked, I was free to welcome both spice and grapes. And here's a memory from Europe, the way it is these days. I call it a winter's tale.
She's a garbage man. No big deal.
Yeah, we can, whatever. A winter's tale. Head down, a man sits on the frozen asphalt. When he looks up, I see he's younger than my girls. A scar divides his face from his forehead down the left cheek. A whip, a sword, knife in the dark. A right-handed assailant from the looks of it. Our eyes meet, but he says nothing, doesn't move. I carry in my bra a $50 bill for emergencies, still warm when my hand touches his, avoiding the beggar's cup. Like all journeying children, he wants to know, are we there yet? When will we be home? So now, if anybody has a question for our readers, for anybody, please, we can have a minute. Just let me know. We have 12 comments in the chat. That's a record for the Buffalo Corner. So we have to take a look at that. So did anybody have a question or a comment or something to say about any of the readers?
think in the chat, I have to sort of echo what people said in the chat about how special the readings were, and just that we appreciate people sharing them. Or at least I do. I can't speak for other people, but I also appreciate them sharing. And
Thank you, Jan. Anybody else want to say anything? Otherwise, it's very windy and cold here. We can all go and huddle up somewhere.
well, having lived in Boston a long time, I was curious, Paul, what led you to Massachusetts?
College.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty common.
Well, me too.
I came to Cambridge in 1967 and pretty much stayed continuously. I was off in New York for a couple of years, and in New Haven I met my wife, and then turned out we'd been in college together and hadn't met. And then we got married and came back to Cambridge. So that's how it happened.
And
I miss
what year-
Oregon. I so miss Oregon as a landscape. It's so beautiful there and a powerful, distinctive landscape. But I've fallen in love with Boston, and I've also fallen in love with Maine. So those are precious times. All the time I spent in all three places.
Yeah, I call Boston my second home. When I went to college, I stayed there like you. That was sort of the family tradition. You pick somewhere you'd like to be and you stay there. And
Right.
You may have, what year did you leave Cambridge?
67 is when I started as a freshman.
Right, but when did
I graduated in 71, and then I went to Columbia for a while, and then I was in New Haven, met my wife, and then we came back to
what year
Massachusetts.
did you come back?
74.
Okay, yeah, because I worked at the Orson Welles Cinema.
Oh, really?
Did you ever
Yeah,
go there?
we live near there.
Oh, yeah. I worked there from graduation practically on, from like 77 till it burned down.
Oh, that's great.
The fire in 86. And then I just kept working in Boston until I moved back to Buffalo in 93. So we probably crossed paths.
I bet we did.
That's neat.
I just wanted to say, as an old friend of Paul, that his voice sounds pretty good, even though I beat him up badly, and that's why he's in this outfit today. But he still looks pretty good.
Yeah, Arthur defeated me in chess so many times when we were in college that I'm still bloodied and bludgeoned by his attacks.
Poets are not good chess players. I think. I mean, I dated a ranked chess player in North Carolina, and I would go and play with all those guys, and I did win sometimes because I did weird moves that they didn't anticipate. But yeah, I was lousy.
Well, Arthur is a very good chess player, so I learned a lot from him, but it wasn't enough to beat him.
Anybody else has any questions, thoughts, reflections? Now's the time.
Hello.
Yes,
Hi.
Pat?
Yes. This was such an extraordinary reading. Thank you so much for bringing it to us. And I love the way Paul you can express pain in the surroundings of his of what he's seeing and feel and hearing, and the way he can make it reveal what he feels. That is incredible. But there's so much to, and Nancy, the way she can bring up such deep philosophical things in ordinary little vignettes of life. But there's so much to and yours and Rabbi's it was all so incredible. And I just wish I had a transcript of it so I could sit and like appreciate it fully, because it would take a week to really process this reading. Like, I think that's why everybody's being silent, because there was just so much to it that and so much symbolism and so much philosophy that it was impossible to really appreciate it all in one. And that's the way it has been for these readings, I think, all of them. So I'm so glad that you've got Peter and Teresa and Perry coming, and and hats off to you.
Thank you. And all of these readings, as far as I know, are recorded, and I'm working on a new website, and it will be one part of the website are all these Buffalo Corner readings.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that you can access the last 3 years. I'm hoping that.
Because I'm a poetry mole. I'll sit there and try to, squeeze out every possible meaning or possibility. But with poetry like this, it's, there's so many avenues that it goes in, and you can't really express it in one little capsule. I tried to get the gist of it in terms of what these poets do, like habitually, but to really work out the particulars of it is impossible to remember, like for human beings to, I'm especially old and senile ones like me to do it without reading it.
Now, Patricia Tansey, who has been speaking, created a fantastic volume. It's like this thick, about the Buffalo poetry scene, and many people you've seen here tonight are featured in it. And she wrote such sensitive and really meaningful introductions for each of us. And it's a history of, what is it, 30, 40, 50 years of the poetry scene in Buffalo. So
I just try to give people a handle on the poet, and then that they can start to construct what is going on, like what the architecture of the poetry does.
what is
Pat,
the
and
name?
thank you everybody for being here tonight. It was a very, very special evening. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Ganilla, who has started all of this. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Looking forward to January.
Yes, and just Pat, would you say the name of your collection?
Oh yeah, it's a celebration of Western New York poets.
It's really a fabulous book.
It's on Amazon.
Unique, Yeah.
And I'm afraid they're going to take it off if people don't buy more of them. But
Oh.
it's $20. But I have copies that I sell at readings and things. I'm only charging 12 for them. But it's hard. I have trouble changing because Kindle, it CreateSpace changed to Kindle, and I'm not quite sure if I can change the price without erasing I'm not good at technology, and I'm not sure. I think I know how to do it, but I don't want to take a chance, of undoing the page, because you have to, if you change one thing, you have to resubmit it. And the whole thing has to be resubmitted. And I'm afraid to change it.
Thank you, everybody. I think it's time to say good night, unless anybody has anything else. It was a wonderful evening. I'm so happy you came. I mean, this is a bad time between Hanukkah and Christmas, and everybody's busy. So I appreciate it extra much. And well, I hope to see you all in January. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night. Thank you.
Just hit end. Hit leave.
I'll get off of it. Please. I know.
Guess what?
Okay. No, we're staying. You're staying.
Well, it depends.
What depends on